Welcome everybody, and thank you for coming to OCOM's second Relocation Forum. We're going to have these forums about once a month, and we're going to organize them around topics that we've heard are of concern to you guys. And we know that things are going to be different when we move downtown. We'll be in a totally different downtown atmosphere that'll be really different from our leafy, suburban, lots of parking home that we have had since 1983. One of the things that's certainly going to be different, and I've heard is going to be on your minds, is that you'll be interacting with the public more than you are here. We have practically no interaction with the public in the college building here, just in the clinic building, and that'll all be different. You might interact with people who are experiencing homelessness or poverty or other disadvantages. So the topic of today's forum is all about just that, interacting with people who are experiencing poverty and homelessness in Old Town Chinatown. And so I'll introduce our speakers. First we have Chuck Fee, who is a OCOM graduate, and he works for Central City Concern. We also have David Nail, who is a member of the board of Sisters of the Road, which is a really cool organization you're about to learn a little more about. Can I ask that we start with you, Chuck, and then David in a few minutes. Can you say a little bit about your organization and the work that you do, just as a way of getting this going? And then after that, I'd like to open it up to you guys to ask these guys questions. That'll be our format today. You'll ask questions of the people on the panel. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're interested in being here, and hopefully you have something to say. So I work at Old Town Clinic. We're a primary health care clinic, and it's a part of a larger agency called Central City Concern. Central City Concern has been around for about 30 years in the downtown area, Old Town. If we're anything, we're a housing program, because we have 23 buildings, we have 1,600 units of housing. About 70% of our housing is alcohol and drug-free. In addition to housing, we also have 12 health and recovery programs, primarily addiction-type programs. We also work with helping people with employment. About 70% of our employees at Central City Concern have gone through Central City programs or other types of addiction recovery type programs. Myself personally, I'm an acupuncturist and I work at the clinic. I'm also the education coordinator, so I work a lot with different student learners who come through our programs to learn about what I think of as the social determinants of health. So things like addiction, mental illness, poverty, race, the things that definitely affect people's health beyond the biological. Is that good?
That sounds great. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, and I'm David. I've been on the board at Sisters for just a couple of months. It was in this last summer that I was selected and created an intent to be on the board, and they asked me to be on the board. But before that, I was involved with Sisters. I got involved with Sisters. A friend of mine had wanted to do a project downtown, Milltown. It was a foot care ministry. She wanted to find out some of the services that were downtown. And so we happened to know about Sisters of the Road. We just kind of stopped by. And first time we'd gone in there, it was just a normal day in the cafe. And the first time, by the way, that you eat at the cafe is free. That's for everybody. And then just sitting there with some folks at the table that I didn't know, but shortly became friends with and acquainted with, really made an impact on me. So I decided that was something I wanted to continue to do. Really got involved with volunteering at the cafe. Got my son came to visit in town one time. He did a barter work job down at the cafe. That's what I like to do down there. And then because of my background, I still work for a large corporation after almost 22 years. 22 years in January. And the job assignment became more of a part-time job assignment. It allowed me to do a lot more things with my free time. And that's where I got involved with Sisters. And really for me, Sisters, the relationships that I create in the cafe with people that are experiencing homelessness and poverty and not experiencing homelessness and poverty. That's really one of the key tenets of Sisters, is that people can dine in dignity, can dine in all classes and all races of people invited to sit down and have a meal at the same table, have a conversation, and create those relationships. And so Sisters really stands for me as authenticity and that dignity I talked about at the cafe, where all people are welcome. Everybody gets to sit down and be waited on and have their meal brought to them and have their dishes taken away. Everyone is treated that way. Nonviolence is a key principle. It is another key principle that Sisters as well. Nonviolence is in everything that we do. It's in all of our meetings. It's the way we check in every morning. We have a daily check-in before the cafe opens, before all of our meetings, the guidelines talk about nonviolence and really non-humiliation of anyone. And empowerment is a big thing that I think is key at Sisters. I see a lot of people that have experienced homelessness and living on the streets, and I see people that are creating their stories using video and stepping up to find their voice and really being empowered, really creating change and creating. It's really a transformational experience to see someone that has not had the privilege that I've had to be able to step up and find their voice and be able to make it a clear statement about what it means, to be in that, to have an experience like that. So it's very diverse. There's lots of diversity and all sorts of things, and it's just something that I really like to do. And I did bring some, and I hope we'll talk about this, but some meal coupons that are a typical way for people that I've found to start a conversation with people that are what we call panhandlers, or some people call panhandlers, people that are asking for loose change outside of stores. There's a way for you to interact with them without having to give money or things like that. There's a way to give a meal coupon to Sisters that invites them not only to a conversation at the time of your interaction, but also allows them to come and have a meal at Sisters. So.
Thank you, guys. That's perfect. Does anyone have a question that they'd like to pose right now? You can come on in if you like. There are some seats at the front. You can come in the front door if you want to.
So I hear there may be some apprehension and fear about moving downtown. I think that's well warranted. It's a big change. Our clinic where I am right now at Old Town just expanded, moved into a larger facility next door. There was a lot of stress in the changes, transitioning, your students, so in some ways your staff is going to be more stressed out, the teachers, it definitely affects things. So ask me questions, thoughts, something. I don't know where to go. Cool.
One of the things I get stressed out about walking downtown and makes me cross the street to walk away from people, which makes me probably not look friendly, is the cigarette smoke. I don't know if anyone else thinks about that, but so do you have any tips for interacting with smokers?
I guess you just got to go away from them. I'm not sure. Not interact with. I don't know. I don't have any tips about getting away from cigarette smoke. There's less smoking, obviously, overall. At the clinic where we work, people are supposed to not smoke directly at the entrance. There's this whole, there's a barrier around an area. Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know where to go with that.
Yeah, for me, I think choosing to interact or not to interact is just a personal decision. I mean, there's times when there are people that are, you see people with schizophrenia. I've seen people like that on the street from time to time, and they're at times violently arguing with someone that I don't see, and that can be very intimidating for me. And so I may choose to interact or not interact based on how safe I feel at the time, time of day, things like that, what's going on. But smoking. I mean, if I can say if that's something that's whether they're homeless or not homeless, if you don't interact with people that make the smoke in your face, that's probably a personal decision. So, but I think that there are some opportunities to have conversations with people. There, you see a lot of times people sell street roots newspaper. Are you familiar with street roots? Street roots is, I think, comes out every 2 weeks, and it's the whole staff is people that have experienced homelessness or are experienced homelessness. And there's the system of all the articles and the content from the newspaper comes from people on the street and some other reporters based on healthcare changes and things like that. Maybe profiles on different mental illnesses and things like that. And then there are vendors that sit outside some key locations in downtown, outside of Whole Foods, grocery stores, for instance, that sell these papers. They think they buy them for, they have to pay 50 cents and they sell them for $1. So it's kind of a small time business venture, and I think there's actually some pretty interesting stories in street roots. I really enjoy it. So, and it's just from a different perspective. It's a way to expand your thinking. And I look at my experience as sisters is a lot of that is expanding my thinking and to include people that are just living differently. So, yes.
Hi. In the spring, recently took over as Dean of Clinical Education here, and I've worked with Deborah Mulrooney over there, Associate Dean, who has a lot of public health experience in getting us in as members of the Coalition of Community Health Clinics. And we've been looking at this move downtown as, both an opportunity, but also, recognizing some of the challenges that we'll face with some of the demographic that lives downtown.
Sure.
And one of the things that we've tried to emphasize in the clinic is the importance of referral out to appropriate clinics for A&D patients or dual diagnosis patients. In large part because we don't have the experience of treating this very specialized clinical population. I see there are a lot of students here actually who I don't see any interns right now, but some that will be in a year or two. I'm wondering if you could speak to that, the challenge of treating this clinical demographic, and particularly the importance of having strong referral networks and referring out when appropriate. As far as our philosophy, Deborah and me, we look at this population as having its own unique challenges as anyone that might have serious cardiovascular disease, and the importance of sort of integrated care. That doesn't mean that we don't have a part to play in this, but it's a challenging population, and they have their own specific needs, and we want to do what's right by them. I'm wondering if you could speak to that.
Sure. It's a complicated question, and I'm going to just talk and might say some things that are, I don't know, we'll see. So it's more interesting to me that the referral question is a common one. I mean, I get a lot from physicians. I get a lot from all sorts of different medical providers. So, like, what do we do with these people? I think the more interesting question for me, and the thing that I think is really what I try to work with my students, is how can you get more comfortable with addiction, with mental illness? Not necessarily to treat and fix, but at least get familiar with it so that because some people are clearly have a sore throat, and they may still shoot heroin, and they may still struggle with homelessness. You can still work with them around their sore throat. Just knowing your scope, I think, is important, as you're saying. The referral stuff I find is pretty easy. It's easy to learn the different programs at different places. But how can you build enough relationship and rapport and trust with an individual in a certain situation that they're going to do that, or even think about doing that? Or maybe return back to you a year later and say, God, that guy was pretty nice to me before. Maybe I'm really ready to get sober now. Like, what was that you were talking to me about? Because my fear is when it's all about referral is we're not dealing with the people right in front of us and really learning to sit with that uncomfortableness of, like I talked with a physician yesterday who had a patient who is in active addiction. He just got out of the hospital from being stabbed. He wants to be detoxed, just outpatient. It's not appropriate. He needs to go to a detox center. The physician really can't help him any further than that, except give him that message. And for the physician, that was very uncomfortable. He wanted to do something more. And I just had to give him the reality check of, there isn't. You need to encourage him to go to detox. That may be a long circular thing, but I think it is important as acupuncturist myself to know, because I work in an integrated setting, and I do have physicians right beside me, to know when I'm referring out or when I'm working with people. But it's not really referring out. I still maintain relationship. I'm still going to work with folks who have real complicated situations and help them relax, help them calm down, maybe help them stay on their medications, help them show up for their appointments. Just continue having the relationship. I want the relationships to continue. I don't want to just push people back out into, because there isn't a lot of services, truthfully. You know, there isn't a perfect fit. There isn't, if you have someone walk into your clinic like next door who's a heroin addict and really struggling, doesn't really want to get clean, what's the appropriate referral? You just kick them out of your clinic. You ask them to go get other services, and you try to work around that dynamic and be really upfront. But there isn't probably somewhere he'll go unless he's ready to go. Anyone want to disagree with me or say something about that? I know it's a little controversial.
Well, it is. The challenge is that, you know, at CCC, I mean, you have a system set up there, and the people that work there either have a long history of working with this population, or they're at least in a setting where they want to learn about that, and they have support there. The challenge is we don't have that at OCOM. We have a few people that have experience like that. And there's also, I think, the assumption in Chinese medicine, because it is so wonderful and can treat so many things, that we can treat everything equally effectively. And I think that's a mistaken notion.
Sure.
And so I definitely hear what you're saying, but and you know, I think the important thing is if someone is you know, has dual diagnosis or has addiction issues, you know, ideally we want them to get into treatment for that. At the same time that we can treat them, you know, with our medicine for the things that we do best. So that's
yeah.
a challenge.
And I just think that if we're ever going to get a handle on addiction and mental illness in our culture and homelessness, we all got to be involved on whatever level we can do. And that's more what I'm interested in, is kind of getting people familiar with the whole dynamic and being safe and paying attention to when people are real severe and really in active addiction or what have you. That's more what I'm pointing to.
I'm curious on how do you think you can gain the skills to be comfortable with and to be able to recognize the different levels of where people are at? How do you gain those skills?
Sure. By doing it, and by reading about it, and the same way you get any skills around working with any of the diseases, any of the disorders, learning about how they show up, what are some of the warning signs, having mentors and teachers. So I guess in my ideal universe, if you guys are going to move, you are moving downtown, you do have more people on staff that are going to be more versed around these kind of social determinants of health that you're probably going to interface with, maybe in your clinical settings, but just in the environment, in the neighborhood. Is that?
Can you, I think the face of homeless individuals that a lot of us think of are more the chronically homeless.
Sure.
And that's really what I think a lot of people have in their minds when they go down to Old Town Chinatown.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the chronically homeless, which presumably are the people with mental health issues and alcohol and drug addictions, versus some of the families and how the services are down there, and if it's weighted towards one side or the other? And that might be more than you all deal with on a daily basis. But
I think the families are more invisible. I think the families are further out. They're not downtown. You're going to see a lot more men downtown are going to be visible as homeless, as on the streets. The demographic of homelessness in downtown has changed over 30 years to include more families. But the shelters and such are primarily men's shelters. There's one women's shelter in that kind of downtown core area. More folks are moving further out east and out west, where there's more affordable housing and less services, less traditional services for those kind of poverty and homelessness issues.
And when you say affordable housing, are you talking low-income housing, or are you talking more shelter?
Low-income housing. So a place, like an apartment place. The shelters are primarily in that downtown Chinatown area. There's some that are further out a little bit, but they definitely aren't as concentrated. Because some of those shelters have been there for 40 years. Mission, Union Gospel.
All I was going to add to that is there's just different reasons for people being homeless. It could be mental illness, but it could also be disabled veteran, somebody that's returned from war that didn't have a place to come back to. And so there's a lot of different reasons, and we see a lot of different faces of that in sisters, and there's some chronically mentally ill and things like that. There's an array, large diversity of reasons for homelessness. But he's the expert on things on the demographic and how people live and stay on there. But my experience has been it is mostly men in single bed type shelter located.
I'm going to say one more. I'll get you. You have a great opportunity to go downtown. In a real crude sense, because I always wanted to work in community health with my acupuncture license. I used to be a crisis counselor down in Eugene before I came to acupuncture school. So I wanted to return to that kind of dynamic and work in Portland, and Deborah gave me a job. But so I feel really blessed to have a job as an acupuncturist and to work with really sick people, work with true pathology that you're not going to see in private practice. It's incredible. I mean, you learn so much. And we're not the most effective at it, but sometimes who is? But at least you're in the mix. You're working with people that are struggling so much that the basic acupuncture practice can be a piece of cake compared to that. So you have a huge benefit for your schooling to be in an area where you can at least exchange, interact, maybe volunteer at a shelter, what have you, just to work with people who are really struggling and really suffering, and see if that's what you really want to do for your life, too. So you have a great opportunity down there, I think.
Yeah, actually, a couple of questions. Can you give us a sense of the current demographics? I mean, how many people are homeless people are in downtown, Chinatown area, if we know? And just to kind of give us a snapshot. And also, you mentioned your work with Central City Concern, that you have students. And so I think this kind of goes back to one of the other questions. Are there any written materials or orientation type materials, things that you use for your students that potentially would be appropriate for us to use with our staff and students and faculty to help start to develop this skill set of how to interact with folks in a compassionate and caring way while still ensuring our safety?
Sure. I'm not good with numbers.
Okay.
And they do homeless counts lately, and they try to work as hard as they can, working with different nonprofits and have people circulating to count and stuff. And I don't know.
Is there a place that information is tracked or
what I've heard recently, in a lot of this is because as a result of the information that's coming out from, I don't know if you've heard of Right to Dream.
Okay.
It's a rest area down in Burnside. Where people that are kind of popped up at the same time occupy Portland. So there's a lot of political questions about the location and sustainability of the rest area. But as a result of some of the information that came out, what I've heard is that there's on average, about 1,700 homeless people that are experiencing homelessness, and about half as many beds. So there's about 800 beds for 1,700 people. So you start to see, people are camping under bridges, camping out in tents and rest areas and things like Dignity Village. Although I haven't been there, I've heard there's quite a large number of people that stay up there. So that's kind of where the overflow that I can see. That's where that goes. And I know that we have a number of a lot of resources for nonviolence and they're just
Voices of the Street. It's called Voices of the Street.
Yeah, there's a book. I didn't bring it with me, but there's Voices from the Street. Sisters has been in existence for almost 32 years, and during the course of that, they've taken the opportunity to listen to people, well, almost exclusively listen to people who live on the streets to help design the way they operate their business, and nonviolence being a central pillar of what we do at Sisters. People have been invited to share their stories and things like that. And one of the things I would encourage you to do, if you're open to that, is just to come down to Sisters and have lunch and just it's like I said, it's free the first time. After that, it's $1.50, and if you want to work for 15 minutes, you can earn enough to make a lunch. But I think you'll see different races, you'll see different people, families. You'll see that, and I think that seeing people interact in a community like that will give you a signal on how to interact with them outside. And people will start to recognize you, and I think that will be. It's beneficial to me. I live in the Pearl District, so I live right across Broadway, basically, and I'm walking my dog and just doing what I do, and so I interact with people that are live on the streets a lot, and so seeing a familiar face helps me feel safe and feel at ease, and gives me an opportunity to have a conversation with somebody. So that's what I would encourage you to do. That.
There's, in addition to Voices from the Street, there's lots of books on addiction and treatment, different memoirs and such. Things that I think about are a book called Hooked. It's a good book about addiction. There's a book called Tattoos from the Heart. It's about a program down in LA of Homelessness Industries, Father Boyle. I think that's an amazing book around compassion, just working with people around criminality and suffering and such. There's a lot of stuff out there. I guess I want to at least impart that things are different downtown during the day versus at night. Nighttime is a whole other story. And it's not just about the residents of downtown. It's about people coming from outside. So you got a lot of younger folks coming to the bars. It's a lot more active. I mean, they're the people that are actually more obnoxious to me than the folks that live like downtown, living on the streets and such. So that's something to think about. Nighttime downtown is pretty crazy.
What time does the craziness start?
Well, it's going to get actually more active later. 10, 11, 12 at night. It takes a while. So it's not just at dark. It's like quiet.
Yeah.
It's 11:30.
Yeah. After we'll be close.
Yeah. It won't really affect you. Right. And and I also want to think about your demographic in being, I don't know what the percentage is, but I taught here for a brief moment. A lot of women, obviously. Younger women. So it's a different dance for you all than for me. And just paying attention and going where you're going and not being lost and not, if you see something that looks shady ahead, you go around it. People are selling crack. They're not going to care about you unless you're buying it. And they might look at you and say, "You looking?" "I'm not looking. I'm going." Just go. It's really not a big deal. So it's just like any big city. You all have probably been in big cities, and you're just going to be in a more urban environment. And there's a lot of benefits to that, too. There's a lot of great things that happen downtown. Much better food than up here.
I want to kind of contribute to that. My sons have both been at elementary school downtown on Park and Cooch for the last 7 years. And, there's people dealing drugs on the benches right next to the playground. And, You know, part of it makes me scared. They're going on weekly field studies. They're not cooped up in their building. This is a school that interacts with this area, and I've come to build that relationship, and there's been fear there, and there's been some mama bear there, and you know, parking my car 5 blocks away and having to walk. Yeah, I keep my radar on, and I always am analyzing my judgment, and but we also do a lot with Sisters of the Road. We do a lot of fundraisers with the kids, building clay bowls and selling them and donating the money, and the relationship really does just kind of grow. And you know, I think the after dark thing is big. But there's a lot of moms down there, and we're sitting on the benches, and people walk by, and they may interact, they may not. The smoking is an issue, but we've also put up signs saying no smoking. This is by law. And we've kind of cordoned off our area of like, hey, don't smoke here. There's kids playing, you know. So I think we have the rights to kind of put up our stakes on what we want down there. Mm-hmm. But we also have to realize that there's going to be an interaction and a dance to it. So
that's really good. That's true. Any other thoughts, questions? Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you have any tips about, you know, if we're coming in contact maybe with some of the same people every day, or even if it's different people every day, are there things that we can do or things that we shouldn't do to have a positive impact on people when we're down there as non-experts? And I'm a staff member, not an acupuncturist, so from that viewpoint.
I mean, just you can be friendly. I mean, I think one thing that I've heard over and over is just greeting people is huge. You know, and it doesn't have to go anywhere. If there's that guy that you always see standing there on that corner every morning, you walk by from your car to work, just saying hello, good morning. You know, and they'll be like, whoa, hey, good morning. You know, I mean, they'll be shocked sometimes that you're saying anything. But for me, that grounds me. For me, I feel like more involved. I don't want to walk around in a bubble my whole day. And I do know a lot of people because of my work. And if people don't meet my eyes and greet me, I usually don't say anything to them. I wait. I try not to greet people on the bus because I know we'll have a big conversation. There's HIPAA's out the window and whatever. So, but no, I just say whatever you're comfortable with, you know, just, I don't think there's any no-nos. I don't give money out usually, but I don't, it's kind of like when I was in Cambodia a couple years ago, and you can get this thing called beggar fatigue, where you just get overwhelmed. And there's these little kids, there's packs of them, and they jump you. There's like 7 or 8 of them, like, and they want stuff, and you're like, oh my God. And then day in, day out, you just get overwhelmed. I got used to just engaging with them and just turning it on them and having more energy back at them. Like, before they came at me, like, hey, what do you guys got? And they're like, whoa. You know, like, they're used to people like running, you know, and I think it's similar. It's just like being friendly, not being scared, unless there's something that you have to respond to. But I think you'll be in a better position to respond if you're not tight and constricted and stagnant. You're flowing with it. I think it'll be better.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think it's about dignity. It's about, you know, I think people will be more, more positive if you look them in the eye and say hi. I mean, I think that I acknowledge that you know, you're asking the question of 2 white men, and there's going to be there's definitely a difference between you know, that interaction, the dance that as we talked about. There's some differences there. So that's, everybody has their own place of safety, but I think that you know, saying hi is something I like to do. Just make eye contact and say hi, because I like that. I found that since being in a wheelchair, there are less people that want to make eye contact with me, and it's something that I've learned. It's a little dance that I've kind of started to do, whether it's subconsciously or not. But it's something that I've become a little bit more to.
And there's obviously going to be gradations on what you're going to experience on the streets. When somebody's in their active addiction and they're really intoxicated and they're stumbling, it would be appropriate for you to access appropriate services for them. Like Cheers is a mobile van that Central City Concern runs. They can come and do a drive-by, look into picking the person up, taking them to detox, to the sobering station. And situations like that are clearly, you're going to deal with them differently. Someone who's actively psychotic, like you're saying, yelling and screaming and fighting, they'd probably be relatively harmless, but just walk around them, see what's up. There's a lot of people out there with untreated mental illness, and there's not enough services, and it's really sad. I worked with a guy yesterday who was so paranoid and really he kept telling me he couldn't go back to his apartment. It was Monday. Can't go back till Tuesday. Tuesday's safety net. Tuesday's when I get my check. But it's Monday. You can go back to your apartment. No, I can't go back to my apartment. It's Monday. It's Tuesday. It was loop for a while. So I called his apartment. He had a place to live. He had a place. I was the third phone call they had gotten from people trying to get the guy back to his apartment. It just took a while, but we got him back to his apartment. But there's a lot of people out there, stumbling around, and they're bound to walk into your facility and different things. That's different than just folks who are living out in the streets and are kind of just getting by. There's all sorts of different things going on. So it's not I can't give you a general blanket, obviously.
The camp that's down right now, Burnside, and right at the gate there.
That's right, to dream.
That you referenced earlier. I think that's kind of bringing out some of the tension in the neighborhood, and that tension is probably with regard to not being there enough facilities. You're seeing change in the neighborhood. We're part of it. Each year it's developing more and more. What are your impressions of just kind of where the neighborhood is going? Just kind of got feelings, and what are some of the tensions that might be there?
I don't see tensions. I'm amazed at what we can do down there right now.
I don't mean tensions in terms of...
No, but let me just speak to what I see as changes, I guess.
Yeah.
Sure, there's a gentrification of the Pearl and the gentrification of kind of Old Town. Chinatown's moved further up here, right?
Right.
More of the restaurants, more of the businesses. It's really different than 30, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago, it's changed. Some of the agencies downtown that provide social services, like Transition Projects Incorporated, which runs 4 shelters, just fairly recently opened up a new building right by the train station called Bud Clark Commons. Well, a portion of it is that. The rest of it's Home Forward, which used to be Housing Authority of Portland. It's a brand new, huge facility for some of our most medically fragile in the community to live. That's amazing. Blanchet House, which is an old school soup kitchen with 20 beds of men that feed everybody, and they get donations from the community. It's an incredible facility. It's in an old building, old. They just broke ground on a new facility next door to them, right by the Chinese Garden. That's going to double their capacity. I mean, and our building is a $20 million project. It's going to be an integrated site with mental health and allopathic and Chinese medicine. It's a huge facility, and those are all brand new buildings. So even though there's gentrification, there's architecture build, advertising firms and architecture firms and all sorts of other mixed use type things going on, and there's less low income housing in some ways. There's all these other things happening that are incredible. The Grove Hotel on Burnside, which is right near where you guys will be, sort of, is going to be an international hostel with some other retail shops, more to move it towards some of the younger crowds, some of the hipster stuff. And there's some really cool coffee shops and food places. I don't know. I think it's doing what it's doing. I mean, I don't think the wave happened a long time ago on changing that area, and it can't turn back now. So it's a shame that some people are priced out of that area, for sure. The Right to Dream, I think they just took an opportunity because that was an empty lot, and they had a landlord who was upset at the city, his dynamic with them, and they're just saying, hey, we need a place to put our tent up. We need to be somewhere that we have some more autonomy. We don't want to be in the shelters. We have a dog or what have you. It's not going to, so it's complicated. But I think what Mercy Corps has done is incredible facility down there. Saturday Market's developed a bigger site. It's a lot of development and positive development, really cool development. So I think you're moving into a good area. that way.
Oh, I think it's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that from somebody who's a service provider down there.
Yeah.
That you have a positive feeling.
I think so.
That's good.
And I think like the woman back there, Emerson School, is that?
Yeah.
When we first moved into that neighborhood, we're on the corner there of Broadway and Park, or Burnside and Park.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our tenants were doing like walk-bys by the playgrounds and different places and picking up needles, and trying to just clean that area up, trying to change some of the dynamics. Because people do die in the bathrooms across the street, and there has been activity, all over Old Town. All the same reasons that Central City was born out of are still going on in Old Town 40 years later. Just the flavor of them's changed, the colors of it's just changed. But it's all still, there's still criminality down there, there's still drug use. It's all still there, just as it is out here. It's just a different looks to it. When it's on the street, it's on the street. You see it.
Just want to echo a lot of what you're saying. I spent 4 years working downtown. And we can actually make some very special friends with some of the homeless friends. There was a woman that was always on the same bench every day, and so it was always a pleasant thing to say hi to her, and some reason I had time to sit and chat for a few minutes. And, I like the idea of being able to give meal coupons, because I really do like to give what I can to folks, because they're the aggressive kind of life. But for her, it even got to be special enough to, in the winter, I got her some mittens and gloves, and and there were just some really special things to do. So, and I think that realizing that said, I also encounter some not so friendly folks when I'm living on the street, but sometimes are even on the scary side. So, you have to kind of get a feel for it. I guess my question is, do you think that we are, in interacting with this population and wanting to, maybe provide services, do you think that we best done in our own clinic or in interactions with your clinics? Just trying to how we can go about reaching out more to that population.
I think you're positioned really well to provide some services. You're going to have people that are clearly just living downtown and stable, and they're like, whoa, acupuncture happens down there. I had acupuncture at Outside In. I had acupuncture at Old Town. Acupuncture is very familiar to a lot of kind of lower income folks in recovery from addiction. Portland's amazing that way. So a lot of folks have experienced it and may want to come back. And so it's just working around. I think behavior is more important, like looking at how people are behaving. Can they handle it? Are they coming in intoxicated? Are they coming in really off the hook? That's a different story. But if they're just kind of just don't look the same as what usual patients look like, I think you just need to figure out a way to be comfortable with that.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, special days, or
I don't think so. I think mix it up would be my little opinion. Mix it up. No, don't segregate it. So, no, I would just because I used to work out of Washington County once upon a time, and that was attached to the jail. So we have people coming down who were incarcerated, as well as people outside of the community. A lot of Hispanics, Spanish-speaking folks would come from Washington County. And then there'd also be visitors for the people in jail, too, which was bad. But anyway, so we have this mixed group of folks, and it's fine. Like, once again, I just think it's important. It was important for us, for Central City Concern, to continue moving deeper into the community there, especially interfacing with Pearl, because as one of my coworkers always talks about, when he was living in one of the Central City buildings, he'd go to the same coffee shop that other folks in the condos would go to. And occasionally he'd sit down with someone and start talking, they'd find out where he was living, and they would always be saying something like, oh, I have a sister's brother's son who has addiction problems. What do you think we should do? And she's probably talking about her son. or whatever. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, addiction isn't just relegated to like homeless population. So it's all over the place.
I guess my particular concern is about some people that you mentioned that haven't gotten a lot of discussion. We've talked a lot about people suffering from addictions, but mental illness and actually veterans populations. Is there anything you can say specifically about interacting with them? I guess with mental illness, any warning signs, anything to be aware of when dealing with someone who, may not be able to truly interface with you with someone you're interacting with them? And I guess for you, for the veterans, is there anything we should be aware of in engaging with those folks?
Yeah, most of the folks that I've met that are veterans have been very very polite people. I think that you have to. For me, I would say you have to. I recognize that they're veteran status and thank them for service on Veterans Day and things like that. And I think just acknowledging that, recognizing that. I don't know if there are any. I don't know that I have any tips. I think it's just I take it person by person. I will admit that in the cafe, a lot of times when I'm stuck with, if there's an intense situation, a lot of times when I volunteer, I'll work the restrooms. My job is to basically be the lifeguard for the restrooms, make sure there's I check it after everybody gets through and make sure that there's not any monkey business going on back there type thing. So if there's a problem, admittedly, I go to people that are on the payroll that are in charge of the cafe. So I guess that's my way of answering. I don't know that I have a specific. If someone is in this, if I have an experience that I don't have any knowledge on how to deal with that, I usually get somebody else involved, and I know that they may not be may not have the opportunity all the time, but. Yeah, at least when I meet people as sisters, it's typically a very positive interaction.
You've identified people on staff that you see as experts with those people?
Absolutely. They do a lot of training, a lot of depression training, a lot of the staff there is incredible in terms of how they're able to deal with people with mental illness or just severe depression or just all kinds of things. I think it starts with listening. And then find out, in your listening, you find out where they are, what they need, what they're looking for, and how you can help them. It takes time and a bit of a relationship to do that. So.
Well, when I think of veterans, I think usually most of the veterans that I interact with, if they're not actively really upset, it's kind of buried. You don't see PTSD screaming around or anything. With mental illness, I guess I get concerned when folks aren't tracking. If there's not tracking, I get worried about their safety more than mine. So, trying to get them some appropriate support. It may be involving Project Respond, which is a program through Cascadia, to come out and assess someone's mental competence. Sometimes it's the police. If somebody's really in danger of self, we want her in front of traffic. But a lot of times people are just afraid. They're just going to get away from you quick. It's kind of like being in the forest or something. You're not going to see them. They're out of there. So.
Have you noticed any difference in interacting with the police in terms of their level of dealing with mental illness? I know they've been doing more training supposedly.
Yeah, no, I usually have really good interactions with the police, truthfully. Whenever we find ourselves in a situation where we do call them, which actually isn't that often, truthfully. Individual officers, some of the time, can be a little more pushy or whatever, but, they have really hard jobs. Usually they're really patient, respectful. They just want to know what's going on. If we are there giving them the information they need, they'll stand down and they'll slow down. They just need to control the situation as best they can or get a sense of if it's out of control, is that cool? Or whatever. They just need to, they're going to come in strong. But if we're there to kind of buffer that, they'll chill, they'll calm it down. They're great. I don't have any problems with the police. especially down in Old Town. I mean, they do stuff all the time. Fire department, one of my friends is on the fire department. Now they have hard jobs.
I just wanted to share with everybody that part of the planning we're doing for the relocation will include compiling numbers, referral numbers for who to call for certain kinds of things, and we will have that available for staff and students and faculty. And that whole resource package is being put together. So it isn't just what we've learned today here, but we'll have more of that information developed and ready for people by the time we actually relocate.
Yeah, and Street Roots publishes, I don't know how often a year, they do a resource guide. It's a little book.
Okay.
That has all those numbers and
Great.
Every 4 months.
hotline. Yeah,
It's a great little
It's-
resource booklet.
we hand them out all the time.
Yeah.
They're all over the place.
Great, thank you.
Have you guys ever felt physically unsafe? Have you felt challenged, like you were going to get mugged, or maybe you have in downtown? If you feel comfortable, would you tell us about that experience, if you don't mind sharing? Maybe how often that might happen?
I haven't felt in danger of that in Old Town. However, I do realize that I'm in a little bit of, because I'm in a little bit of a vulnerable position. So I stay away from the bus station at night. That can be, looks like a pretty volatile place, or could be. So I don't even put myself at the risk of that. The one time that I felt a little bit at risk was I got on a Max, the yellow line coming from north, and I was going back downtown, and there was a large man, African American man, that was really drunk and really belligerent and was really angry, and it looks like he was going to hit some guys. And I wanted to get off that train as quick as I could and get away, but it didn't. Nothing happened. It felt intense at the time. That was the only time I felt I needed to be out of that situation in a hurry.
Thank you.
I've never been assaulted or mugged or anything downtown here in Portland. LA, not here in Portland. And in my role at Old Town Clinic, I find myself, or I am formally, one of the people that responds to situations. If somebody's disrupted in the front room, or someone's looking for some kind of backup, or checking on people. And we've seen one fight, and that was at the old building a long time ago. Most of the time it's loud voices, sometimes some threatening language. We can move people outside very easily, or call the police if we need to. But like I said, that's rare.
Thank you.
So yeah. Any other thoughts, questions?
Say something. When it comes to, at least to kind of give you a difference in perspective, because they're both male and Caucasian, and I'm also on the board with David at Sisters, so I come in contact with people on the streets in general a lot when I go there, when I used to volunteer there more. You end up, I think I've been almost attacked twice on the street, not by men, but by women, which is really fun. But in general, they were people who they have a mental illness of some sort. And I think you just really have to realize that you might have to run away at some point. You can only interact with them so long, especially if they're really lost and they do look like they're going to charge you. It's okay to run away because other people nearby, that person doesn't see them, so they're perfectly fine, but you're the only one in their head. Other than that, for females, you do tend to get more men on the street trying to pick you up. And you should probably come up with a good way to fend people off in general. Like, they could be drunk, they could be high, they could be anything. You don't know what, but in general, you need to figure out a way to do that. Because I've been on the Max a lot downtown, and you have to deal with that. You have people just sit down next to you. You don't know who it's going to be, whether it's a person with wealth or even a person who's homeless, but
you need to learn these sorts of rapport to have with people.
That's great. Thank you, Connie. Has anyone else who worked or lived downtown have something that they'd love to share? Cara, we'd love to hear from you.
I used to work on Gleason and 6th, which I think was labeled Randy Leonard's crack alley, and I worked there for a little over a year. The worst thing, or the most direct confrontation I ever had, and I just offered this as a counterpoint, is that a young man saying the girl from even to me. And other than that, I've never had any threatening, or I didn't find that threatening. I just found it interesting because I don't look Brazilian. But I just want to say there's also a gentle side down there, and that's why I bring it up. That I don't walk in fear when I'm down there. Clearly, other people don't see me as afraid because they sing to me. I don't know. So I just wanted to bring that up. They're just people.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is that we not go into the space with a sense of fear or expecting the worst. Not that we're not prepared to deal with a situation that arises, but we work in an institution that's all about energy. And what we put out, comes back. And so being able to walk into those situations and hold a compassionate heart and not be coming from a place of fear will actually change the dynamic of the interaction.
I volunteer at the Building Center downtown, and something that was coming to mind, I think maybe it was something that you said, or maybe something that someone else said. One time, this one woman said to me, we were having an interaction, and it was going fine, and she was saying, man, some people just work too hard. And I was just thinking about that a lot. Like, it's really quite simple. And we don't really have to think about it as working too hard. How do we handle this situation? How do we handle this situation? You just go. You just show up and you're just there. So think about that.
Yeah, that's similar to once upon a time I read this article about this hospice in San Francisco, this Buddhist guy. He said something like, the best thing you can do for someone who's dying is to stay close and do nothing. And I think about that a lot. I mean, that's a hard place to sit when you want to do shit. You're like, this guy's dying. I want to really help. And the best thing really all you've got left right then is to stay close.
I just like to remind people that there's homeless in this neighborhood, and I don't know if you all encountered them much, but I have on weekends with doctoral modules, and the frightening experiences I had was at the front door of our own clinic early one Sunday morning. Rather threatening, mentally ill gentlemen. So it's not something that's unique to our new location.
For sure.
And you're here at the right time. You may encounter some more books not necessarily.
There's a lot. I mean, it's a layered thing downtown. As I sit here thinking about it, I mean, it's a neighborhood. People that live there full time. There's what happens on the weekends. There's what happens at night. There's what happens during the day in the way of all the retail and all the shops and the restaurants, and there's the garden, and there's just so many things going on downtown in different ways. It's not that simple. I hope this was helpful. Was it helpful?
Yes, absolutely. Last call for questions or comments? Yeah.
It's always the self-care question because of what you do and because there are so many layers and there's just frankly more people compacted into a small space. So how do you, I guess, maintain your personal stamina with it? How do you keep that attitude of compassion? Do you have any tricks? Is it just self-education? Is it practice? What do you guys do to maintain your own even keel?
For me, I the context of gratitude and acceptance, and when I'm in, that's just a personal thing for me. When I'm in a place of I don't feel like it today, or I've got my problems, or those kind of things, I try to create a context, or I make an intention to create a context of gratitude and acceptance, and that usually brings me to a place where I'm open. Not contracted, but expanded to open my mind and open my mouth and open my ears, more than my mouth, for positive intent.
I think self-awareness for me. I'll keep trying to learn as much as I can about that and deepen that so that I can catch myself when I'm needing something that I'm not receiving or doing. And it may be other people giving me that feedback, my wife or friends. Or, my work starts to get stale and cold, and I guess got to get through it and wait for the change. Maybe do some things to catch up to make it more vibrant. I do appreciate engaging with other parts of downtown. I get that opportunity in my job because I can go to other.
This is the second relocation forum. We're hoping to pull one together in January, and the topic is going to be an update on what's happening with the physical building. And then we have ones planned later on for February and March too. You'll hear all about them, and you'll see the posters just like this time. So we look forward to seeing you again at another relocation.